Cleopatra, the pharaoh of an empire that spanned vast territories, was the beloved of two of the most powerful men of ancient Rome, Julius Caesar and Marcus Antonius. History records that she took her own life using a venomous snake. But after 2,000 years, an investigation led by a pioneering forensic detective reveals a completely different story, suggesting that a ruthless power struggle may have been the cause of Cleopatra's death. Did she really commit suicide? Or was it murder? Using the latest forensic investigation techniques, this detective seeks to solve this ancient mystery. The idea that Cleopatra committed suicide contains contradictions. What really happened to Cleopatra? Why would the last descendant of the Ptolemies take her own life? The investigation unveils a stunning tale of conspiracy, incest, and perhaps murder as well. On the 12th of August, 30 BCE, the great reign of the last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra, came to an end after 20 extraordinary years. Her campaign to make Egypt a great power in the ancient world had failed. Her empire had been conquered by the young, newly ascended general Caesar. He was the son of her former lover, Julius Caesar's nephew. Cleopatra was imprisoned. Her beloved Marcus Antonius was dead. Now Cleopatra faced a dreadful choice, to either be humiliated by her Roman enemy or take control of the only thing left to her, her own life. History tells us Cleopatra crafted a glorious exit, taking her life with a venomous snake. I believe Cleopatra's death might be the greatest moment in her life, a majestic exit. But is this the true story behind her death? When the crime scene was first observed, something seemed off in the way her death was described. After 2,000 years, Pat Brown is reopening the case and investigating the death of Egypt's pharaoh, Cleopatra, who ruled for more than a decade. Pat Brown has studied the patterns of the most dangerous and brutal criminals in America. She's an expert in cold cases, such as the DC sniper case in Washington, and now she's applying her skills to solve one of the oldest cold cases in history. Pat Brown travels back 2,000 years to uncover the truth behind Cleopatra's death. She leaves no possibility unchecked and believes that Cleopatra may have been murdered. Brown starts her investigation in Alexandria, the city from which Cleopatra ruled Egypt over 2,000 years ago. One of the most important things is going to the crime scene, for without visiting it, you cannot properly assess the possibilities. Cleopatra lived and died in this magnificent city. Its famous monuments and royal palaces long ago disappeared into its vast natural harbor. Today, nothing remains of Cleopatra's world, but Pat Brown's investigation takes her to the newly built Library of Alexandria. The ancient library of Alexandria, the world's greatest repository of knowledge, was destroyed during Cleopatra's reign. Pat Brown arranges a meeting with a pioneering scholar of the classical era, an expert in Cleopatra's royal family, Professor Mostafa El-Abadi. Professor Mostafa surprises Brown by revealing that there is no direct narrative. What is the primary actual source we have on Cleopatra? In reality, all the sources are secondary. Even the ancient sources, yes, that's correct. Brown wants to examine the original records of Cleopatra's death. The Roman historians Plutarch and Cassius Dio provide the most accurate descriptions of Cleopatra's death, though both accounts were written a century after her demise. All agree that Cleopatra was imprisoned on the day of her death. Plutarch says that when the doors were opened, Cleopatra was found motionless, lying on a golden couch, dressed in her royal garments. As Brown delves deeper into the texts, she discovers serious inconsistencies. Plutarch suggests Cleopatra killed herself by smuggling a venomous snake hidden in a basket of figs. Meanwhile, Cassius Dio mentions a vial. Both offer alternative stories, but neither has been given the attention it deserves. It's the poison. There are so many contradictions that it's hard to tell which account is accurate. Plutarch was, in some sense, a storyteller. Does Brown think he used a more literary approach rather than a strictly historical one? That's a strong possibility. Then Brown stumbles upon something that blows the case wide open. Plutarch admits that he didn't know exactly how Cleopatra died. The truth of what happened is hidden from all. No one knows for sure, as we have no means to confirm how she died. Brown realizes that 2,000 years of history have been built on very shaky foundations. We don't know what happened at the scene, which is why I need to go back and analyze the events and piece things together. The real investigation is just beginning for Pat Brown. While examining the archaeological evidence from Cleopatra's era, Brown considers all the possibilities. If Cleopatra's suicide is uncertain, how exactly did she die? Her investigation now takes her to the crime scene, the ancient city of Alexandria. But the scene is now underwater. 300 years after Cleopatra's death, her royal palace became part of Alexandria's vast harbor. Today, this is one of the most impressive archaeological sites in all of Egypt. Brown explores the ruins of the city that had been lost for centuries. I can't say that the crime scene still stands, she reflects. We have to imagine the entire crime scene. As most crime scenes aren't available in my fieldwork, and this crime scene has been cold for 2,000 years. Somewhere here are the remains of Cleopatra's palace and the mausoleum where she died. But little remains of the ancient crime scene, and Cleopatra's mausoleum has vanished. No one has ever found it. Clearly, Pat needs to get a more accurate picture of the palace where Cleopatra died, so she turns to the man who has spent a decade exploring the remains of Cleopatra's city. He is the marine archaeologist, Jean-Yves Empereur. The coastline here is very different from what we see now, he says. Yes, today's modern coastline of Alexandria barely resembles the one from Cleopatra's era. Emperor can provide a glimpse of the royal district, but the exact location of Cleopatra's mausoleum needs to be determined. How far exactly was the royal palace from the mausoleum? We don't know for certain, but not far. It was hundreds of meters apart. We have the palace here and the mausoleum over there, yes, allowing for movement back and forth between them. Armed with the evidence Emperor provides, Pat decides to construct the crime scene. She draws on details from ancient maps of Alexandria, alongside both archaeological and modern underwater survey data. She can now send this information to computer graphics specialists to create a 3D architectural model of Cleopatra's palace and the mausoleum where she died as well. I love crime scenes, Brown remarks, because if I don't see the crime scene and visualize it, I can't understand what happened there. While awaiting the full picture, her attention turns to the victim. The next step in her investigation involves using her unique skill: criminal profiling. People don't act according to their nature at the moment of the crime. They do what seems logical to them at that moment. Pat's profile will take her inside the mind of Cleopatra. She wants to know if Cleopatra fits the profile of a suicide victim. People commit suicide when they can no longer bear to live, when they are suffering from unbearable pain they cannot continue living with, or if they believe death will grant them something they cannot gain otherwise. So the question here is, does anything in Cleopatra's story fit these cases? Cleopatra was born in 69 BCE and was a descendant of a royal Greek family from Macedonia. Her family was known as the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled Egypt for over 3 centuries. Cleopatra grew up in a wealthy royal court during one of the greatest intellectual revolutions in history. From the beginning, Cleopatra was one of the most cultured and clever women among the Ptolemaic rulers. She received an extraordinary education alongside her brothers and sisters, and from an early age, she learned to speak 7 languages. But Pat's study reveals an unexpected detail about the upbringing of the Ptolemaic family. Cleopatra learned other royal realities, like incest. Her mother and father were, in fact, siblings. There was another secret the Ptolemies sought to keep within the family: murder. To judge the Ptolemies as ineffective rulers underestimates them, as they were one of the most formidable royal dynasties in Egypt. It's a tale of murder, incest, corruption, and bloodshed, and Cleopatra was the last survivor of this lineage. Pat's understanding of Cleopatra is beginning to change. Cleopatra had 2 choices: kill or be killed. She learned much from her family. She learned that if someone stood in your way, you had to eliminate them. And if she wanted to ascend to the throne, she had to apply every method and strategy to become queen. There's a crucial detail that reveals much in Pat's view. The Ptolemaic family had no history of suicide. "I know this," she asserts. "Certainly no one in the Ptolemaic family ever took their own life, and in general they didn't die peacefully." With no tradition of suicide in the family, despite the murders, suicide wasn't part of their character. Cleopatra's personality is beginning to take shape for Pat Brown. She sees Cleopatra as a woman who would do anything to maintain her power. At 18 years old, Cleopatra inherited the throne of Egypt. With it came a marriage to her 10-year-old brother. But when he challenged her authority, he was found dead. Her other siblings met similar fates. Fearing assassination, she allied herself with the power of the Roman Empire. She became Julius Caesar's lover and bore him a son. But when Caesar was assassinated, she found herself another ally, seducing his friend and confidant Marcus Antonius. Together, they launched an attempt to rule the Roman Empire, and they failed. Pat's profile paints a picture of a woman who never wanted to surrender. Looking at Cleopatra's image, one of the most important details is that she never gave up. It doesn't make sense to me that she would take her own life at that moment. The next step for Brown is to merge Cleopatra's psychological profile with the 3D model of the crime scene. She is about to witness what no one has seen in over 1700 years. Ancient Alexandria. With the help of the latest computer-generated imagery, Cleopatra's city rises from its watery grave. The next stage is investigating Cleopatra's suspicious death. Based on historical and archaeological research, Pat Brown now has the layout of Cleopatra's city, and she has concluded that Cleopatra was not the kind of person who would take her own life. Now she must prove it. Pat can now reconstruct the events that led to Cleopatra's death. When I build a picture of the crime scene, I imagine how it happened. You need to be able to construct a picture of the crime scene, and that picture has to work. For 2,000 years, history has told us the story. On the day Cleopatra died, Plutarch recorded this sequence of events. Cleopatra was sealed inside her mausoleum. Nevertheless, a venomous snake was smuggled into her. She sent a suicide note to Octavian, who was staying in her palace, and then locked herself inside. First, Cleopatra took the poison, and then her two maids followed. When they were discovered, Cleopatra was dead, and her two maids were dying. They found 2 small puncture marks, like needle pricks, on her arm. However, some details don't add up. If you're building the crime scene in your mind, can you imagine 3 women trying to handle a snake? Especially the maids after watching their mistress fall. What are the chances of successfully handling the snake, especially when everyone is afraid of snakes? Pat now wants to test the credibility of the historical version. After traveling to Cairo, she meets with an expert in snake venom and ancient poisons, Professor David Worrell. Pat takes him to a lesser-known corner of Cairo called Abu Rawash, a place known as the Village of Snakes. Here, Professor Worrell introduces her to the prime suspect. "What is this snake here?" she asks. "It's the famous horned desert viper," he says. "It's a handsome snake. This snake was known in ancient times. It's venomous and dangerous, so we should keep our distance," Worrell warns. "Its venom moves slowly through the body. How long would it take the venom to kill someone?" Pat asks. "Perhaps the venom would take days or even weeks," Worrell replies. "So this likely isn't the snake that killed Cleopatra. I reject the idea that the horned viper is the cause of Cleopatra's death." "It's not plausible," Pat states. "This is the snake we should focus on," Worrell continues. "It's our strongest candidate, the Egyptian cobra. It's the most venomous snake in Egypt. It has a lot of venom, and its venom attacks the nervous system." "The toxins block nerve signals," Pat asks. Yes, and they cause paralysis in the limbs. Worrell explains, once the cobra bit Cleopatra, the venom would have paralyzed her eye muscles first, then frozen the muscles in her chest and stomach. Eventually, she would have suffocated and died without leaving any physical evidence on her body. It would leave 2 marks like pinpricks, Pat adds. Yes, though they'd be very small, Worrell agrees. This matches the first description of Cleopatra's body. Plutarch said there were only 2 marks. Professor Worrell believes a single cobra could have bitten all 3 women. How much venom would be in each bite, Pat asks. It could inject a few drops of venom with each bite. That's a lot of venom, but it's possible. The evidence suggests that multiple successive bites could inject a lethal dose of venom. At first, Worrell's testimony supports the snakebite theory. But a few days later, Pat notices a crucial detail in her reconstruction of the crime scene that changes the entire story. Cleopatra's mausoleum was very close to the palace where Octavian was staying, only a few hundred meters apart and within walking distance. Pat concludes that the guard delivering Cleopatra's suicide note would have taken only a few minutes to go from the mausoleum to the palace and return. He would have found her alive when he came back. Pat needs to know how long the Egyptian cobra's venom would take to kill Cleopatra. The fastest death reported was in 2 hours, but it could take as long as 15 to 20 minutes. However, it's more likely to take several hours. Cleopatra's maids died moments after the guard arrived, meaning the 3 victims died in the shortest time possible. If Cleopatra had sent a message to Octavian, the guard would have gone and returned quickly, finding her still alive.